Now, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has hit out at the American President Donald Trump. Now, the Ayatollah has accused Donald Trump of being responsible for the casualties that have taken place in Iran over the course of the last few weeks amidst the widespread protests. Now, American-based human rights group has reported that at least about 3,000 people have been killed in the crackdown which followed the protests. And the Ayatollah has now laid the blame squarely on Donald Trump, saying that Iran finds the American president guilty for the deaths, the damage, the carnage and the slander that was inflicted on the nation. Now, Khamenei has accused the American president of wanting to devour Iran so that Washington could bring Tehran under its military, political and economic domination again.
این خصوصیت در این فتنه بود که شخص رئیس جمهور آمریکا شخص خود او تو این فتنه دخالت کرد، حرف زد، اظهار نظر کرد، تهدید کرد، فتنه‌گران رو تشویق کرد، پیغام داد از آمریکا به این کسانی که رو بعد خواهم گفت کی بودن که بری جلو نترسید. گفت از شما حمایت میکنیم، حمایت نظامی میکنیم. یعنی خود رئیس جمهور آمریکا وارد فتنه شد، جزء فتنه است.
Now, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei also instructed the Iranian security officials to break the backs of the seditionists. His comments have come on the heels of Donald Trump thanking the Iranian leadership for sparing some protesters. Now, Trump had said that more than 800 hangings were scheduled but were cancelled literally at the last minute. Thanking the Iranian leadership, Trump said that the decision had weighed heavily in his choice not to launch a military strike. Now, according to reports, despite the de-escalation in rhetoric, the U.S. military assets are being moved into the region to address the ongoing tensions.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
Now, human rights groups, in fact, say that protests in Iran have largely subsided, but only after the brutal crackdown, while the country was under an internet blackout. Now, according to the US-based human rights activists, as of the 20th day of the protests, now this is what the human rights activists who are not based in Iran, but are based in the United States of America, claim that about 3,000 protesters are said to have been killed, and about 2,000 plus are said to be injured, and more than 22,000 have been arrested. Now, Iran's internet shutdown continues over large swathes of the country, crossing the 200-hour mark, but the Monitor NetBlocks has said that internet has returned, albeit to only about 2% of the ordinary levels. Now, despite the calm returning on the domestic front, Iran is now facing a lot of problems with respect to what is happening at this moment within the country, vis-a-vis the protests that started off on some very legitimate concerns of a cost of living crisis, but very quickly had turned into an attempt to try and bring about a regime change. All right, now to put all of this in perspective, you're joined on this broadcast by Dr. Hamid Raza Ghulamzadeh. He's joining us from Tehran. He's the Secretary General of the Asian Mayors Forum and is a political analyst. Now, Dr. Ghulamzadeh, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, I want to start off by asking you this. What is the situation at this moment in Iran? At the moment, there has been an internet blackout. Is the internet back on again? And what is happening with the protests? Have the protests all petered out?
Thank you very much for having me. So to elaborate on the situation, let's have a timeline of the incidents and the events. to be more accurate about that. On the late days of December and early days of January, we had legitimate protests that were carried out by people, especially in the markets. They went to the streets. They called on the government to improve the economy. And it was very peaceful, actually. The true meaning of peaceful protests were carried out during those days. But on January 8th, the situation changed. The son of the previous Shah, the former Shah, Reza Pahlavi, called for people to go to the streets and to demonstrate against the establishment and against the government. And on the other side, the Americans supported that. And on Thursday night, January 8th, what we had was a combination of a massive number of people who were protesting the economic difficulties, and a majority of people who were rioters and terrorists who exploited the population and they turned the situation into violence, and they carried out
Dr. Ghulamzadeh, that aspect is well taken. My question to you was, what is the situation on the ground now? Because there was a lot of vandalism, there was a lot of setting on fire of some of these government buildings that had taken place. There was a lot of private property that was destroyed by some of these people who claimed that they were protesting. Have these protests now been crushed? Has normalcy now returned in Iran?
So I was saying to make it more accurate, because there is the difference between protests and vandalism and riots and terrorist attacks. So on Thursday, we had both of them. But on Friday and Saturday, January 9 and 10, it was only terrorist attacks, and after that, it was finished. So since Sunday, we did not have any vandalism, we did not have any riots, and we did not have protests either. Because on Friday, people who were protesting, real protesters who were against the bad economy, they realized that they are being exploited by some minority people, some agents from the outside, who want to make it violent, and they distance themselves. So the number of people on the streets on Friday night and Saturday night were very lower than Thursday.
Interesting.
And
now, Dr. Ghulamzadeh, if I can also, just for clarity here, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has blamed Donald Trump for the deaths that have taken place in this unrest that was prevalent in Iran over the last few days. Has the Iranian government put forth any proof to say that they were probably CIA or Mossad operatives who were fomenting the violence on the streets in Iran? Because the Iranian government has clearly indicated that this violence and this rioting and this arson was being carried out by certain outsiders with vested interests.
Actually, the Iranian government doesn't need to provide any documents, because President Trump himself has posted on social networks, and Israeli officials have also posted on social networks supporting the riots and saying that they have their agents on the streets of Tehran. Israeli officials say that they have Mossad agents in Iran. And so there is no need for Iranians to provide. Of course, there are documents. There are some recorded voices, for example, saying that some Mossad agents is organizing some attacks with some Iranians inside the country, training them how to create Molotov cocktails and bombs, explosive devices, and carry out guns and such things. So we have such things. And on the other side, we had on the news today that MKO organization, Mujahideen Khalq organization, today announced that they have actually had tens of their forces killed during the unrest. And this group is a dissident group which was marked as a terrorist organization in the past by the Americans themselves. And now they are being supported by the Americans, and they are responsible for killing of 17,000 people for the past 4 decades in Iran.
All right. We're completely out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Ghulamzadeh, for joining us from Tehran and giving us your perspective there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.